Now, we're talking about travelling and holidays and, are you feeling okay? I'm ready to book a holiday now. I was a bit kind of apprehensive beforehand in case it was cancelled or, COVID got the better of us again, or I didn't want to be going through all those tests and jumping through all those hoops. Eoghan Corry is leading Irish travel journalist and he's on the line now. Eoghan, good morning.
Good morning, Maria.
I presume you've been all over the place already, have you?
Yeah, not since Christmas, but I have actually tested most of the getting in and out of country since last July, since the digital COVID cert came in. And what's changing today is that there was a realisation before Christmas that the digital COVID cert had a best buy date and that it would need to be renewed. That process starts today. As of today, immigration officials will be entitled to seek evidence that you've had a booster vaccination as well as your full course of vaccination. It doesn't mean that you need it today. It means that you need it 9 months after your second vaccination. Most Irish people got their second vaccination around July, so it'll be kicking in sometime around St. Patrick's Day.
And can you opt for a test instead of that, or is that the only...
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't travel. A lot of some of the newspaper headlines this morning saying, we're grounded if you don't have your booster. The reality is that a lot of people, through anaphylactic reaction and things like that, cannot have the vaccination, and they will continue to travel as they have until now, requiring a test before they travel. It's an antigen test, not a PCR test. It's less complicated. It comes back much more quickly and it's cheaper. But this is very important. This is for travel within the European Union. Beyond the European Union, all sorts of complications. For instance, America requires an antigen test. Canada requires a PCR. Lots of people flying to Florida through Toronto. A few of them have been turned back at the gate because while their antigen test was fine for Florida, they needed a PCR to transit through Canada. All those complications outside the borders of the European, the 27 EU countries, travelling within Europe. Pretty straightforward, digital COVID cert, but make sure you have the new one. You will get a new QR code after your booster, and they're being issued very quickly if they're directly administered by the big vaccine centres. In a case of a family member here, she got the booster at 10:20 Sunday morning, and she had the QR code at 4, 5 hours later. So the email is coming with your new QR code. Delete the old one and keep the new one on your phone.
And I suppose will this make the transit through airports easier now?
It's not that it makes it easier, Maria. It just brings that QR code up to date. The system which a lot of listeners will have experienced last year, it's not 2019. It's a little bit more complicated, but that it was quite clear. The digital COVID cert, full course of vaccination, probably wasn't going to weather us through the storm. And all it is an acknowledgement of that. Czech Republic, Austria started introducing their own regulations before Christmas. Some countries talked about 6-month expiry date. So what the European Union did was, let's get together and do it as a club like we did last July, all 27 of us together. And that's what's happening this morning, Maria.
And when you talk about the antigen tests, is that do I have to go somewhere to get that done and have a result, or can I pitch up with my own antigen test and say, here's the result?
Yeah, it has to have some sort of medical certification. Isn't defined exactly what that is, but a health centre, a doctor or a pharmacist is what's being let through at the gate. Very important. It's not going to be an epidemiologist who's going to inspect your documentation. It's the person allowing you to board the aircraft. A lot of controversy over that. I see people saying, I breathed through Dublin Airport, nobody checked. The airlines are obliged. They're actually not just randomly checking for their own reasons. They're obliged by the immigration authorities to check each passenger to make sure they have the required documentation. Coming into Ireland, that requires your digital COVID cert, evidence of vaccination, and also it means that you need a locator form coming back to Ireland. Most countries need locator forms, and they're more important than the digital COVID cert once you've filled them out, because they generate the QR code, their own separate QR code, verifying the information. But don't do them in a hurry, Maria. They're complicated. I'll give you an example. Spain has 8,000 municipalities, and it looks for the municipality. If you're going to Salou and you put down Cambril, it's the wrong municipality. So don't do it 2 minutes before you take off. Portugal looks for a postcode. Canada, which I know it's outside the European Union, but most of them ask you for your date of your second vaccination. That's something you might have to rummage for. But Canada asks you for your first vaccination, date of your first vaccination as well. So it's a little bit complicated. Make sure the locator forms are in order. Before COVID, BC, we used to have a passport and a mobile boarding pass to get us on board. Now we need the passport and mobile boarding pass are still there. We need the digital COVID cert, and we need a locator form as well. So 4 pieces of documentation. Technology is awesome. They'll all be on your phone. It's more complicated than 2019, but not as complicated as it might be.
And do you think, Eoghan, that these are going to be forever now, or will we ever get to the stage where, all COVID restrictions are gone now?
I mean, that is the big question. Bureaucrats love forms. They love having that information that they have from the locator form. I would imagine they'd be reluctant to let it back. The masking on aircraft, I suspect that to stay because it's a big international industry, and they're very, very important that they keep their record clean in terms of spreading infection, not spreading infection. I think that the digital COVID cert will be there as long as the medical authorities think, and we're going to probably move as slowly as the slowest moving part in the European Union. So until the the countries that are most worried or most paranoid or almost are most xenophobic, probably more importantly, about COVID, think it's time to drop it. We probably have it for a while. People are a little bit on social media saying, April, May, it'll be gone. That's very optimistic. I do expect it to linger through the summer and into winter anyway.
And would you say that countries who are more dependent on tourism or areas of countries that are more dependent on tourism will be quicker to drop them than others? Because if it's going to annoy people having to jump through all these hoops, maybe they'll opt not to bother at all. Or will they be saying, no, we can't afford to be shutting down again if we get another outbreak of this bloody thing?
You're talking Spain, really. 70% to Spain and Portugal. And Spain is the number one market in 4 of the major European countries. So Spain, you remember, led the charge for the digital COVID cert. When I was out there in Madrid in May, the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Pedro Sanchez learned his English in Ireland when he was a small boy.
Really?
So even though he doesn't speak in an Irish accent, he throws in like little Irish nuances in the middle of a press conference, which only Irish people can pick up. But anyway, Pedro Sanchez announced that Spain would be leading the charge on to get the digital COVID cert through and reopening for vaccinated people. It's very clear that they're not going to endanger their local population or make themselves sort of, we're just opening for the sake of a few bob. But reopening for the vaccinated was something they pushed through, and it was adopted Europe-wide in July, and they're pushing again through for the continuation, for the updating of those vaccination certs, because it's not really a question of expanding it or dropping it. It's a question of finding out whether it worked, which it did, and then making sure it's up to date. That's what's happening this morning. Another thing very important was, if we're back in March 2020, everyone was thinking of country of origin. We can't have anyone from Italy arriving here. They might bring that dreadful thing with them. The whole the philosophy behind the digital COVID cert is that it's vaccination status, not country of origin, that will determine whether you can travel or not. And that's really what we've had since July. It's quite clearly working, but it's not going to continue working unless it's updated, and that's what's happening today.
Question for you, Eoghan. Morning, heading to the UK next week. Do I need anything to fly over and back? I've heard it's just a passenger locator form upon return.
That's exactly it. Passenger locator form on return, and no, it's very uncomplicated. The least complicated travel we have at the moment is into Britain. They don't require a locator form. We do. If you're flying Ryanair, you will need a passport, but if you're flying Aer Lingus, a driving licence will do. So it's the least complicated travel is still with Britain.
It's hard to, we used to moan about queues in the airport and having to a boarding pass and having to put it on your phone, and then if you were going for a certain amount of time you couldn't download it in time for your return trip with Ryanair. I think they've changed that now, but we used to moan about all of that. We think how easy it was now.
You've just touched something very important there. You can't do the locator form more than 48 hours in advance. You used to be able to, coming back to Ireland. Now you have to do it 48 hours in advance, which is fine if you're in a nice hotel with Wi-Fi. But if you're hiking up the Pyrenees, it's not going to be... It's filling out a locator form, particularly when it's complicated. The Irish locator form will look for your vaccination date, your second vaccination date. It'll look for your air code, which I know the wonderful people in the department think we should all know off the top of our heads, but I don't know many people who do. And all of it'll look for your date of birth, and it'll look your address that you're going to be at for the 2 weeks after you come back. So it's not be treated lightly, you see this piece of information. And where it also kicks in for the locator form is most families, I don't know if your family operates like this, Maria, but there's a designated form filler who gets to do all the boarding passes and all the check-ins and just picking someone's season, whether they want a bag or not. And the designated form filler is now in charge of the locator form as well. And it's... the first one or two are fine, but when it comes to Auntie Nellie and trying to work out, chase her down for her date of birth, it gets complicated. So it's, as you say, first world problem.
And what's your prediction, Eoghan? Do you think that... Sorry, I beg your pardon.
That's the new age of travel we live in. I was just finishing up, yes.
Do you think there will still be cheap flights, or are the days of cheap flights gone now, or will there still be cheap flights until we all start flying again and then they'll go up in price, or what's your prediction?
Very simple: supply, demand. Really good supply in from Ireland this summer. The two main airlines we all travel with, the Ryanair and Aer Lingus, both have a very ambitious inventory. Looking at them before Christmas, I thought they were really ambitious. There are new routes in from Ryanair, including some juicy ones like Madeira. We haven't had Madeira since about 2015. That's back. But some odd ones as well. But if the uptake on those seats is fast, the prices will rise quite quickly. And you could see what happened when Eoghan Martin made that announcement. It had nothing to do with travel, about not requiring the digital COVID cert to go to restaurants. But it changed people's mind, and there was a good lash of bookings last year. So you can see the prices creeping up. They're still lower than 2019 because of the number of flights that's on offer. But I do think that, and I do expect them to stay that way through the summer. If you listen to the airlines and some of the travel industry, they say prices will go up by about 20% because there's 20% less capacity, but that depends on demand being exactly what it was in 2019. And there's still a good bit of hesitancy there. There's still a lot of people saying, okay, we're not really ready to do it yet. So I do expect prices for the flights to stay quite low, quite good through the summer. On the ground, you can see prices rising a little bit faster. Restaurateurs, hoteliers, they're trying to make the money back that they lost. They're facing the same bills we have at home. The cost of heating across Europe has soared through the winter, and they maintenance costs and repainting and doing all of that with no cash. So you can see hotel prices, restaurant prices climbing a little bit, particularly in the touristy regions. You can also see, and this is important, Maria, special offers. People who don't get a lot of tourists see this as an opportunity. Alentejo in Portugal, Extremadura in Spain. They're never going to compete with Malaga, but their product, which is all nature and hiking and out in the air, they see this as a sort of a good post-COVID product.
Yeah. And
for example, the region of Murcia, which competes with Alicante and is always sort of the poorer brother of the Alicante Benidorm region, they are offering free travel insurance, including COVID, for everyone who travels to the Murcia region and stays in the Murcia region. So while aviation prices low, quite a good, prices on the ground will spike, but keep an eye out for those little incentives that some of the regions are offering, because I can't remember who it was who said a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and a lot of regions of Europe are looking at that saying, let's get moving here and let's get our tourism going back, especially if their offering is particularly suitable to a post-COVID environment with the big stadium events, the 5,400 people on a cruise ship, the temple bars of Europe. they're going to be slower to get back into the game than the open air regions and the mountains, including Waterford.
Absolutely. And also, like, do not leave things till the last minute. Like, be as organised, do all the research you need, find out exactly what forms you need, what exactly you need to do. And it's not that you have to have the booster to travel. You can have a negative PCR as well.
An important website is the official EU website. It's reopen.europa.eu. It's very easily found. If you Google travel restrictions, you get a cacophony of information, a lot of it out to date, and people trying to sell you things. That's the official EU, and it'll take the national regulations from each country, and they'll be up to date. They're updated all the time. And for instance, Italy has dropped its requirement for testing for people flying in, even if you have the digital COVID cert. It dropped that today. Portugal and Greece both still in place. I expect Portugal to drop theirs. Antonio Costa is a happy man this morning, having won his election on Sunday. But the local restrictions are not on that, and they're something that are harder to get your head around. But a good rule of thumb is have that digital COVID cert up to date on your phone. Moving around, you'll need it into restaurants and into bars in parts of Spain, according to local restrictions. An example, Tenerife is at a higher level of alert than Gran Canaria or Lanzarote are at the moment. Barcelona is at a different level from Madrid. Malaga at the moment requires masking outdoors. So there are local restrictions you will come across. But rule of thumb, keep the digital COVID cert on your phone up to date with the third vaccine, and keep an eye on that European website just to see what the regulations are. That's reopen.europa.eu.
Owen, a fount of information as always. Thank you very much for talking to me this morning.
Always a great pleasure, Maria. Thanks.
See you. Bye-bye. That's Eoghan Corry there. He's a leading Irish travel journalist.